Yeah.
Says it started. Let me refresh this. All right, there we go. All right, it is up on YouTube.
Okay.
Yep. All right, let me close that out. Actually, I should probably not close that out. I should probably have that up so that I can see if anybody is in the chat. That would be smart, huh?
Yeah.
Pause it. Just pause it. We'll keep the chat up. All right, there we go. It's paused, but it's up in case somebody's in the chat. I'll keep checking it. I
may ask questions. Who the heck is he?
All right. So, just as an introduction, we are a little bit of a cluster frick tonight because I told Mike Rogers 8, and he's an hour different. So at 7, he was like, "Hey, I was expecting to see, so I was expecting to see, a link." And I was like, "Oh, wait, crap." But hopefully we'll see them pop in. Steve Musgrave, I'm also waiting for, but he's a bit of a wild card. He can be hard to wrangle. He's trying to get him to do anything. It's like trying to wrangle cats. I am Bad Ankle Bill, otherwise known as Bill Blankenship, otherwise known as Asshole, otherwise known as Crazy Lout. We have Jeffrey Campos with us.
Here, present.
He is Psychic Pencil on Twitter.
Yeah.
And we have Karis from Karis Playround.
Hello.
And the comments will show up. The comments will show up on here. We just can't reply to them. I don't actually. Maybe I can reply to it. I think it's on Facebook. I can't reply to comments. Dark Beast, salutations. Hello, Dark Beast. I'm going to assume that that's one of Karis's fans. We're probably going to be flooded with Karis's fans.
Sorry.
There you go.
So we are just having a bit of a roundtable discussion while I do a little bit of work on a Christmas piece for Karis. And hopefully we get our other 2 members in. I'm going to keep checking on those. Keep checking on where I sent the links on Twitter and on Facebook. But just have a little roundtable discussion about being an indie creator in 2020, given that it's the end of the decade now, and we are, we're all indie guys who are attempting to, do this as best as possible with having as few reins on us as possible, and especially in the market now, and especially in the environment now that's online with some of the larger companies. It's a little bit more, how do you say? It's a little bit smarter to just kind of go your own way with it and have control over your own intellectual properties, have control over your own projects. We're seeing a lot of shakeups in the comic book industry with the whole Comicsgate issues. We're seeing a lot of shakeups in all industries. It seems kind of spreading, and it seems like a backlash to a lot of everybody attempting to interject politics into it. I try to stay fairly apolitical. I consider myself a centrist, maybe slightly left of center, but there's a lot of conservative ideals that I hold, and there's a lot of liberal ideals that I hold. It just seems that everybody wants to go to the extremes on all that nowadays, and they want to try to interject in entertainment because entertainment industries, especially narrative-based ones, are good for putting messages out. The problem is when you're trying to put those messages out in a way that is right on the surface, it can seem pretty shallow. You kind of have to leave a certain amount up to the audience. You can't direct them and hand wave them to, get the message that you're intending. You kind of have to put in there what you want to put in there, and ultimately how people interpret things will be up to them. So Mike is a little bit more knowledgeable on some of that stuff. He's part of the Fandom Menace stuff, which is why really, again, I hope he pops in. I'm sure he will at some point. So he's dealt with a lot of that, the aspects of it. Jeff is kind of starting to branch out on his own. We've talked and we've kind of made some deals between him, me, and Mike in terms of helping him to produce his book and get it out there through crowdfunding in the coming year. With me making the pretty pictures and Mike handling the publishing aspect. And Karis is a veteran of this stuff.
Nice.
And also another client that I work with on a regular basis. So we'll start with Karis, given that I think you probably have the most experience in terms of doing your own thing. Tell the people watching about yourself and what it is you do.
Well, I'm Karis. I run a fetish website actually for diaper fetish material, which is a very, very niche, very, very like concentrated fetish, or at least it used to be. And then I kind of ran into the furry community, and the fetishes, I guess, they're very accepted there. So they kind of paired up, and I ended up with this amazing, huge audience that I never thought I would have. And so I've kept creating specifically for this niche because of the response that I got. So it's very symbiotic that way. And I would have thought that this would have run its course maybe years ago, but no, if anything, it seems to be growing. So in a way, I'm just as surprised as anyone else. I'm like, oh, we're okay. Nope, we're still doing this. We're still going forward. Okay, then. It's definitely not a one-trick pony kind of fandom, and I don't mean that as a joke. But no, furries are very accepting, and they are absolutely 75% of my audience. I do non-furry stuff as well, non-anthro fetish stuff, but there's no question that furries know how to spend money on art. They know what they like. They contribute to crowdfunding. They participate. The feedback is always tremendous.
Yeah, I didn't think that I would be involved in the furry community in any capacity. And then as I tell everybody, and you can attest to this, I literally responded to an ad 3 years ago with whenever you had posted up on Facebook looking for new artists. I responded to the ad with I will do that gig for the lulz. And here we are 3 years later. I have enough of a portfolio of it to continue to do it, and to have pulled in other clients, like singular clients, in terms of just one-off pieces for people's personal galleries for their own characters, for their own personas, I should say. But yeah, like it's completely outside my wheelhouse, except for the fact that, like as you said, the clientele is just absolutely darling. They are always very happy. They give the least amount of feedback, and it's like in terms of revisions, and it's usually only when it is necessary. It's not somebody just being picky or finicky about stuff. You have a lot of creative freedom. They like seeing different takes on their personas. They like seeing different takes on their characters. They like there's a lot of creative freedom in it, and they pay well. They're some of the most ideal clients that I have, and that's why I've stuck with it. And and I hope that nobody takes offense to whenever I say, and anybody watching takes offense to whenever I say, I'll take that gig for the lulz, because I am very much like a good soldier whenever it comes to my work. And I, and I do this for a living. Anything to keep me out of an office, I'm fine with. It's just I have a kind of a twisted sense of humor, and I thought, like, oh, well, like that's an experience. I'll take that. Let's see what let's run with it and see what happens. I never thought that 3 years later I'd still be doing it.
That's a lot of lulz.
Dark Beast says, loving the art and the conversation, and woot for Karis.
Oh, thanks,
I'm really
Beast.
glad you tuned in, Dark Beast. We're glad to have you. I'm hoping we get some more people in the chat, just because I love getting the feedback, and I'd like to start doing this on a more regular basis in terms of doing the streaming. And it's on me to do it more consistent. Jeff,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about yourself, because me and you just recently, I mean, we've known each other for a while. You were doing some Thunder Chickens fan art starting about a year ago, which I actually just received today. But recently we've moved into a more professional capacity because you want to really move forward with a book that you've been working on for how long?
20 years.
20 years.
And
All right.
it started, believe it or not, like Karis was saying, from the furry community. And you know how big you guys are closer to Pittsburgh than I am. And I'd like to go out there someday and just, be going to the artist alley there.
Yeah.
8,000, what, they have a record, 8,000 fursuits. And these are professional people, by the way. There's doctors, lawyers, technicians, oil riggers. I actually attended. I know I'll get to talk a little bit about myself, but as a Comic-Con, there's a local Comic-Con up in New Hampshire, Granite Con, and I went there 3 years. And I bought. Well, right now I'm kind of in between things at this point, but people like my art, and I give them. It was like little free stuff I had on my table, which cost me a little bit. I didn't really make a profit that day. Those days I went, but. It was fun. It was, and I enjoyed it. And the characters came. Maybe I should jump back a little bit. I'm flashing back and flashing forward at the same time.
That's fine.
Candlejack came. The book itself came as a challenge. I was actually challenged by a dungeon master. I'll tell a brief story about it. Where I was working a third shift job, and he had an online game. Of the online version of the D&D, and he asked, well, he saw me drawing in the cafeteria when I was just doing scribbles and stuff. He said, wow, you can draw. They were like stick figures. I was like, okay, yeah, I can at the time. And you want to join, right? I need somebody. I need another player. And I said, okay. So I actually came up with two. I should have brought them. I have to dig in my portfolio bag. I actually got 2 portfolio bags of the original Cardinal Rigor Mortis, which I still have. And I think I still have the original Drow Elf. And so I wrote a story for each, I gave him the Drow Elf. Actually, he liked both. And I gave him the Drow Elf background, quick story for his magic, dark magic and stuff, and that the Drow Elf held. But when it came to the Cardinal, because of being a priest, he had powers too and stuff. And he said, well, I want him. I said, no, you can't have him. I want him online. It was kind of a challenge. Then I dare you to write a story about him. I said, I will. I'll write a story about the Cardinal. And it became, if it wasn't for him, if he had taken the art piece and put it online, which I still have, I don't think there would be a story, because he challenged me at that moment, that night. And, it was a rough night anyway, began with me working third shift. But he challenged me, and I think that's what kind of inspired me. I never really thought I'd be a writer, and it progressed. I'd work on it from 1999 when it first started, on and off. I'd put it aside, and it was times I just didn't really feel like doing it. It was like I almost threw it away at one point, but I kept it. And my computer died, and I wanted to please. I really wanted it back. I felt close to the characters, because each of the characters I came up with and their names were people that I had met, throughout my youth, and a lot of them are gone, deceased, but their personas are in each character. I think that's why I truly liked them. Like the one I'm drawing now is Gareth, and behind me and I don't know if you could see it, I'd have to move the camera, but there's the Cardinal and Gareth, some drawing I did back in 2003 or 2005. Was doing a lot of pencil. I do a lot of mechanical pencil art. I rarely do color, but I do have a colored pencil one of the Cardinal and both the Gareth and the Cardinal. It pops in my mind, and the images, I just have to get them out on paper, and what I see. And my basic tools are just mechanical pencil, a tortillon, a kneaded eraser, and maybe a rubber eraser too, and that's it. That's all I really use. I don't ink or anything. It'd be nice to ink some of them, I think, but I'd like to. I should be talking to the camera right now. I'd like to really move forward with this. I think that's why I saw Bill's art, and I gave him a commission to do as an example. And because I really like Mighty Max, by the way, I really like
Love Mighty Max.
Even though I'm 59, I'm an adult who likes cartoons, but I draw, what's in my mind. And like Bill was saying, the furry community I think they're very supportive in a lot of things you do. And there's a lot of potential to grow, aside from, you'll have more, I think the quantity and the quality of your work will be admired more by the furry community. It won't just get tossed aside. Some people will come up to you for a commission. I think maybe I'm being biased here, but I'm not really sure if I am. But the furries I met, even at the Comic-Con up in Manchester, New Hampshire, those 3 years I went, 2015, 16, and 17, they seemed very, very knowledgeable and likable, and they knew what they wanted. And they admired my art. And I gave them a little, sample of, a little quick sample I did of a couple characters, and they liked it. And even though there's other comic book artists there too, the furries, there was actually nice furry tables set up for furries, even in New Hampshire Comic Granite Con. So a couple tables for them. It wasn't as much as Pittsburgh though, but that's the whole enchilada right there for the world for furries. And I was really hoping to go there at one point and get a table and stuff, but finances and time and budgeting with what's going on right now. And I was taking care of my mom after my dad died, the last 30 years.
Wow.
That's a long time. And the story really needs to get out there. I think it's more than a story. I think it's a statement. And I think that's why I needed, after seeing Bill's work, and he introduced me to Mike and as a writer. And Mike, I like what Mike was, his telling me to break it down even further and clean it up, because it really does need to clean up. I could clean it up, and it'll take forever cleaning that story up, because it's kind of flashbacky, and I just kind of do it on the fly, whatever. My fingers just sometimes do the typing without my head. Okay, stop a minute, for the characters and that are in there. But this human, in the story itself, it's actually two worlds. It's anthropomorphic world with archipelagos, kind of like the movie there with a few years back, Avatar. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
With archipelago, but not the waterfall from the air, coming from the clouds. But it's kind of like that. It was broken. I actually thought of that back in '99. It was about around 2000. I'll be honest, around 2000. To break up the story when I first came out, and I actually have the original old digital printer. I'm dating myself. Digital printers, when they used to be popular. I printed it out the first few. I still have it I have a little book, a little cachet with my pencils in it and everything. And that is like a prized possession. I got to put that in a glass case one of these days, because that's my first ramblings.
Do you find that happens a lot though? Like, you'll have an idea and go, no, this is pretty good. And then suddenly some multi-million-dollar flick comes out and you're like, well, there's my idea right there.
Yeah, yes. You can, or similar nuances or whatever that you had thought of.
Yes.
I try to make mine as original as possible. The characters themselves, the names, which are kind of unusual too, like Lord Nordellan or Zuka or Berwick, and actually Wild Sound. I don't know if Bill told you, I sent my thing 3 times to Wild Sound, actually 4 times, and they did a nice critique on it. Really lambasted it too, the last one, but it showed my editing. But in every single critique, they really liked it, I felt, and
cool.
They really liked the book itself. So it's probably out there already, ideas and stuff. But I can't stop that. But I still want to move ahead.
Oh, absolutely.
I know Candlejack is, copyright. It's kind of risque with Warner Brothers right now because of Freakazoid.
I was going to say, is it the same story? Is it different?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we've talked about that. It's definitely not connected to Freakazoid character Candlejack, and I think you told me that, like, you originally wanted to get Castlejack, but you had a hard time getting that domain name, and then after that, you had you found that Candlejack was available.
Was available. Yep, I snapped it up during the big .com thing. Yep. Bubble.
And we've talked about we talked about that some in private in terms of like how to proceed with it, and even checking like whether it would be able to move forward with it under that name, or whether to go under Castle Jack and then after the fact get the domain, because I know you've been in contact with them. In terms of what you guys were talking about, like seeing putting a story together and seeing stuff out there. I still swear that the Jumanji movie ripped off a lot of the plot points and stuff that we did in Double Jumpers. Yeah. So like I have that experience, but it's nothing that I can prove. And
no, you can't. Right.
If somebody's stealing from me at this point, then it can only go up from here because. So I'll just take it for what it is. Paulus Mobus said, "Holy balls, 20 years." Yeah, like I talked to Jeff a lot about this at other times where a lot of people think like, oh, am I too old to do this, or is it too late, or is it if I was going to do it, I would have done it by now. It's like, no, Jack Kirby, he was 40 when he started doing the Fantastic Four book. Which is what he became known for in terms of starting the Marvel movement, like it's never too late to do it. The first version of Thunder Chickens, I came up with around 2005, and it was a comic strip for a community college newspaper. And it was the Thundering Chickens because that was their mascot, was the Thundering Chickens. And then whenever I wanted to revive it, like I was trying to think like, ooh, what could I do for the Zuda contest back in 2009, 2008, 2009. And I was like, well, I could do something with these weird little cartoon chickens that I made, 5 years prior. And I just shortened it to Thunder Chickens in reference to, the Thundercats, or in reference to like the Thunderbird. It just rang, a little bit stronger. So, just shortened it to that. And then that way there was no issue with the, it sounded better anyway, but also so that there was no issue with the copyright. And yeah, like, the Zuda contest was, a decade ago now. This time 10 years ago, I was doing my greatest public failure, as I like to put it. But the good aspect of that is had I not, Warner Brothers would have completely owned it, and I think it's a product that's got legs to it.
WB again.
So yeah, I'd rather have it and be able to do something with it now with another decade under my belt, in terms of being able to produce better work than for it to have been a success back then, which I completely think it would have been, but also, somebody else would have owned it. I would have lost the rights to it. And yeah, I definitely got you and Jeff together on the stream because you both work in the anthropomorphic animal characters. You more along the lines of the furry, and Jeff seems to be more just running with that anthropomorphic theme, which is what I do with Thunder Chickens. Which, if anybody is curious, I am planning on launching the crowdfunding at the beginning of 2020, probably late January, early February, right around the time that people are getting their tax returns back. You know what I mean? I figure people have the extra money, might be interested in just throwing some support at it whenever they have the extra, tax money back. And as well, I think that people will support it just out of being interested in the work. But
I for one have been waiting for this. I love Thunder Chickens so much, just what you've shown me, and I cannot wait for your crowdfunding to start because I'm so looking forward to that damn book.
That damn book, yeah.
And with Jeff going to be working on his property, as of right now, tentatively titled Candlejack, let's just say, because we haven't 100% landed on that in terms of, we want to do a little bit of research before we make some decisions.
There's 40 characters too, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a lot to draw.
Karis, how much you seem to have a lot of experience in terms of doing crowdfunding, in terms of running things yourself. I know you have the Patreon. I know you do, and I know you keep your. We talked about this beforehand in terms of like a way to approach it, but you do more mainstream type of stuff you just keep the branding completely separate on those.
I do.
But I think you can speak on the experience you have, because I know you've done successful crowdfunding campaigns with the more mainstream stuff as well. And I figured you can speak on some of your experiences with crowdfunding, with Patreon, and with just managing your own intellectual properties.
Yeah, I have a bit of a joke, but I'm not 100% sure it even is a joke. And the statement is, I invented crowdfunding. About 15 years ago, I was doing my first furry diaper fetish comic because of popular demand. It was basically just going to be a parody of another popular furry comic that was basically everyone at this one university is gay. Like, just boom. And so I'm like, okay, everyone at my university wears diapers. There you go. 8 pages, done. It was just a funny little thing. But then everyone said, hey, can my character be in this book? And so we figured out the page rate. We figured out how much it would cost to produce the book. We said, yes, your character can be in this book for a fee. So that, I guess, was crowdfunding, and I didn't even know what it was. And then crowdfunding websites came about years later, and I thought, was that $1 million idea I just blew off?
Right.
I hate those ones.
So that's sort of my little joke to myself, is that I invented crowdfunding. But no, I like Bill says, I do have a mainstream comic company, and then I have the Karis Playground stuff.
Yeah.
The Karis Playground is always, as I said before, an easier sell because people want to participate. They want to either have their characters in it, which is I think a great reward for being a patron. You get to see quote unquote yourself up on the comics and whatnot. But also everyone likes to know that their thing is going to be produced. And they don't have to go hunting for it. It's right here. And in fact, I often solicit ideas for, if you're going to be in this book, what would you like to have happen to you, so long as it's along the lines of the theme. And it's funny you guys talk about Candlejack, because that skit from Freakazoid inspired my it's a summer camp horror comic called The Legend of Drippy Jack.
Wow.
And it's instead of murders at this summer camp, people end up in diapers. But that's how that goes. But the people really responded to it, and so much like auditioning to be in a movie, people crowdfunded to have their characters in this graphic novel. And that inspired me to sort of open that. And now when I write for Karis, I write generically, I write the plot, but characters are listed as character 1 and character 2. I give them all the lines and everything, and I say, okay, who wants to be these characters? And that seems to work very well. People often say, when is your next book coming out? I want to be in it. So there's a lot of buy-in for that.
Wow.
And that really helps. I still haven't figured out mainstream crowdfunding yet. In my other life, I do about 6 different titles of comics with various genres under one name. And other people do just one comic, and they have 4 times the crowdfunding I have. So obviously I have some magic to figure out there. But all I can think of is that all these success stories seem to have some kind of hustle that I don't have. And so it's networking for sure. It's getting out there, not in just like the comic shops, but like I just got my first press from just the local newspaper, and it never even occurred to me to send them a press release. And a friend of mine who's a journalist is like, "What is wrong with you?" Like,
Actually, it's not a bad idea.
announce everything.
You're right.
I don't know
that either.
Yeah, and I mean the radio, television, newspaper. Everybody loves local guy does thing stories. You know. So if you've got something to show, if you've got a new book coming out or whatnot, call your local paper, call your, like there's always community newspapers too, right? like what's going on in Chicago kind of thing. But so try to get into those, reach beyond the usual suspects. Like for me, yes, Twitter, Instagram, and various groups on Facebook, depending on which book I'm trying to advertise at the time, but go offline as well. Try and get quote unquote mainstream people to look and notice and go, oh, I'd like to have this in my 7-Eleven, that kind of thing.
Right.
I still haven't figured out exactly how to do that yet, but I do know it needs to be done. Because you've got to have a fan following,
right?
Because they will be your best advertisers.
Yep. That's part of why I was hoping to get Mike on in this as well, and I'm hoping that he still shows up. It was my bad not taking into account time zones. I said 8, and I didn't even think about the fact that to him that would be 7. But he just recently had some success with the Fandom Menace book, which obviously has a built-in audience behind it in terms of the sort of in terms of just like politics getting into industries, and he covers going back to Gamergate, going into Comicsgate, going into all of these kind of villainized movements in a way that I think was. He worked with another writer, and he did what he's doing with Jeff and with very possibly myself in certain capacities, where he is going in and doing the editorial aspects of it and making it nice and tight in terms of the story, in terms of the editing, and trying to not trying but launching a publishing house based on his experience in that via crowdfunding. Is that he has he didn't think that he was going to be anywhere. He had no idea that this was going to happen to him based on whenever I first met him. He was in a very, a real dark place personally. I won't get into it. It's not my business to kind of air his stuff out. I'm sure he would talk fairly openly about it. But he was in a pretty dark place. And then whenever I talked to him the other day, he was showing off his studio that he's got set up for writing and editing. I think he's got some experience that in terms of doing the more mainstream stuff, and how he's gone about that. And I think and obviously gives kind of a different angle, and it's I think I might see about possibly another night this week doing another version of this with as many of you guys involved as I can get on, and maybe plan a little bit better this time and take into account time zones. Just because, like I said, I want to start doing this more consistently, especially moving into, doing Thunder Chickens and, the tentatively titled Candlejack book with Jeff, is that, I know that you have to build up more of an audience on YouTube. And,
exactly.
We've got a few people watching right now. And, usually I'm used to kind of doing it by myself in silence unless somebody messages, but I'm so used to people not putting stuff in the chat that like I don't even pay attention to it. I just sit there and draw, listening to music. But people come in for the discussion, and there's a lot of people that I think that are coming in and because they want to hear your experience, they want to hear Mike's experience, they want the experience of Jeff, a guy who's just getting into it, somebody that they can relate to, the guy who is like, hey, I'm just starting, and and hoping that together we can kind of do some things with the streaming and maybe even otherwise. And I mean, I obviously already work with Karis. I'm already working with Jeff, but to do things where we can kind of help each other in with each other's experience in what we're trying to do creatively.
I like that because it only makes the industry, the independent indie industry, better. Yes. If we share what we've got, you gotta bring that low level up, like you gotta pull people up with you,
Yeah, and plus I'd like to do it in a way where we have some different voices, people that are, as Mike, puts it, people that are they're very much like on the outside of even the sub communities. Like, I did an investigative article on Comicsgate called Comicsgate and the Jungian Shadow. Criticisms and departures, Comicsgate and the Jungian Shadow. And I literally said, I'm doing this as a journal. I told everybody, I said, I'm doing this as a journalist, in sort of a gonzo journalism style, of just kind of injecting myself into the story. But I had people in the mainstream, people that are professionals, people whose names you would recognize in comics, that distance themselves from me, because just because I was doing anything that wasn't just immediately villainizing them. And I'd like to be able to get people from all different kinds of voices, because even the streams on Comicsgate, it's all Comicsgate guys. And even now there's infighting in there it's just so much. It's so off-putting to see these people fighting in between each other whenever they were all supposed to be uniting against another. And even just that, I think, is ridiculous. I'd love to have people, I describe them as groundhogs. Some people use the 3-letter term, which I refuse to use because words are important. And if you start using people's words, then you start adopting their ideas. But I'd like to have people on the left. I'd like to have people on the right. I'd like to have people on the left and right from both extremes and be, just the mediator for a conversation. I'd like to have people that have experience. I'd like to have people that are brand new to it. I'd like to have all kinds of different voices, because I don't see anybody else doing that. Everybody wants to be tribal. Everybody wants to be, on team whatever. And I don't have a team. I don't want a team. I don't want to be a part of any club that would have me as a member.
What I find fascinating about that, and what I think everybody can agree on, is that this industry is a passion-fueled industry. If it didn't matter, there wouldn't be these extremes. And let's face it, none of us are getting rich off this. We do this because we are drawn to it. We have passion for it, and the people that consume what we create also are very, very passionate about it. They want it. And if it doesn't go well for them, they're angry about it, but even through all that, I could be like, let's just talk about Star Wars briefly. What a polarizing fandom that is. Okay. But it's because people love it so much, they feel like they need to take care of it. And what I would like is just 1/10 of that energy to find its way towards indie comics. The more we can get people interested in understanding that there is a whole world of comics and creativity out there that isn't dominated by big companies, I think we could really create something just, next level, very monumental.
I think it will. And I think it will because I remember, a decade ago, whenever people talked about Kickstarters, people were like, oh, that'll never last. That's a fad. That's a gimmick. That's a this, that's a that. And, well over a decade on at this point, it's still going, at least I think. I'm not, I don't have the hard numbers on when Kickstarter and when all that kind of really kicked off. But I think it will, and I think it's just a matter of just consistency. I mean, as it is with anything. The only real denominator for success that I have seen is just keep going. And
absolutely.
That's the thing. Everybody wants to be a Scotty Young, who kind of, I was on the same boards as Scotty back in the day. And I remember whenever he got his first Marvel gig, and I remember everybody kind of pat him on the back, and he got very, very lucky. And we'll probably say he got very, very lucky, at least from what I've heard. I used to listen to his podcast he did with his wife. But everybody wants that overnight thing. But a friend of mine who's also an artist said, she's like, I kind of read the how do you say, the crowd, and she was like, you know what, you're going to see a lot of people giving up, and that's going to clear the way for the people who are going to stick with it. Not everybody's going to make it there. But the only way to make it there is to just literally keep going.
Absolutely. I've quit 300 times and I've got back into it 301 times.
Oh yeah.
That kind of thing.
Now, Jeff, you've talked about with me. You've talked with me about a lot of different aspects of your book. Give us a little taste of what you're doing in the story there. I've read, some of it, obviously, because I want to be able to pull from the actual material, and I know that Mike has dived into it a little bit, but he hasn't. I don't know how far he's gotten into it. But give us a little idea of what the story is for you for the tentatively titled Candlejack?
Well, it like I said, it all came from an idea. Believe it or not, I think I told you, from the Dungeon Master, because he was married with kids, and he had a stepfather who was actually much kinder than his blood father. And I think that's how it all kind of evolved. He wanted the character so bad, but at the same time, I was watching him. He had one child, and I'd love to shake his hand if I could find him right now, George Dow. And he's the one who inspired me actually to do it, even though we're fighting about a character. But he was the one who actually, without taking the character, like I was saying earlier, to use it in the game. I think Candlejack evolves, actually in a basis. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but going back to like stepfathers and fathers, it's a human element in the whole book. And I really feel that need, because the characters evoke that. And they all have their own persona and their own struggles in life and stuff. And as you go through the book, you can see that. And book one contains a lot, but I still like Mike's idea of breaking it down into sub-books and stuff, so people get a chance to read a little bit, and want more and more. So I can actually work on the original book too, which I'm working on right now, and trying to get that moving, because I have it's all up here. It's just putting it down, in electronic type, and also getting the characters drawn, but with your help, your help too, and Mike's help too.
That's one of the things that popped out to me, was there seems to be a strong kind of conversation in the book about father-son relationships.
Yes.
And I can relate to that, because that was the impetus for Thunder Chickens, was to approach, how complicated father-son relationships can be.
Yes.
It's not always like Pa Kent and Clark. A lot of times, they can be really, even when not toxic, they can be really just frustrating. And I actually, whenever I picked up the mail today and I got that tube, there was also the presidential memorial, certificate, thanking my dad for his service, because he died right around this time last year. It was December 18th of last year that they found his body. And he was the reason that I started this, and it was partially to comment on it, and partially because I wanted to, make a book and say, like, yeah, you kind of inspired this, and but even at their best, a lot of the things that I'm trying to approach is, the father-son relationships can be very frustrating, and it's a topic that I don't see covered. Is just that, the idea of the sort of paternal relationship, of it being frustrating without it being like having to go all the way to being like a toxic situation. Just sort of covering that, because I always I don't know if it's a quote, but I've heard people remark on the idea that like every father wants their son to do good, but they don't want him to do better than them. You know what I mean? And that's the eternal struggle of like father-son relationships. And I saw some of that, very early in your book, from the start, between two of your characters that are a father-son dynamic, and that was part of what interested me in terms of the story so far, was approaching that. Now, Karis, tell us about some of the you mentioned Legend of Drippy Jack, and I was originally on to work on that, but unfortunately I wasn't able to continue, or at least I didn't feel like I would have been able to give it my whole attention, just given my situation at the time, which we can go into another time. Some people who know me a little better know, obviously. I think Jeff may know a little bit about it, but tell us a little bit more about Drippy Jack and some of your other stories and some of your other intellectual properties with Karis Playround.
Okay. Well, like I said, it started off with one book that I called Incontinent Student Bodies, which is basically everyone at this college is a furry and they all wear diapers. And it was like 8 pages. It was like, haha, look, it's a parody of this other popular furry book. Check it out. And then suddenly, boom, like people were like, no, I want to be in this. I want you to do more. Please create. you know, and I'm just kind of like, oh my God, okay. I guess I could do that. So I turned it into a series. Issue 2 was like, I think 18 pages. So I combined issues 1 and 2 into one graphic novel. Then issue 3 was a full story. Issue 4, issue 5. Issue 5 came out about 15 years ago. No, not quite. 10 years ago, let's say. And then I began to branch out. I wanted to do non-furry books. So I did a book about Dungeons and Dragons and how it leads two teenage boys down the path of fetishism, because, you know, it does.
It does. Yeah, it does. Yes.
And then from there, I seem to do a lot of parodies. So I did a parody of World of Warcraft, the video game, and I made a graphic novel called World of Wetcraft, where all the characters, again, have this one thing in common. Right. And I've done superhero stuff. I've done slice of life stuff. I've done faux horror. I've actually just recently asked an informal poll of, fetishists, like, would you be interested in an actual horror story that combines these themes with horror? And a couple people said, I'm intrigued as hell. And I'm like, okay. So the great thing is that so long as the fetish is included, there is no restriction on the creativity. Right. And so I get ideas pitched to me all the time. Some of them I run with. Some of them I make up on my own. But it's basically the community that is very vibrant and reciprocal, I guess is the word I would use. And so
the community, we've had Dark Beast in here making a lot of comments. I want to focus on a couple of things that he said. I was drawing, said, if that's a polar bear, it reminds me of an old character from many moons ago. ISB for the win. Look at the Kickstarter for Critical Role, D&T focused Kickstarter, a game that was effectively dead for ages, which is now huge again. So stranger things have happened. And we're commenting on the fact that I was the original artist for Drippy Jack, and then he had some original art that I did for Sammy. So I just wanted to give him a chance to, you know, I've been popping up his comments and everybody's comments. Anybody that's in the chat, whenever I see somebody comment, I'll like pop up the comment on the screen for a few seconds, give people a chance. But, because sometimes it's not always easy to interrupt the conversation in a way to comment on it. But I want to give people a chance to actually, be able to feel like what they're saying, is being seen, even when we're talking about something else. I am reading them and I am putting them up. But go ahead, please continue. You're talking about the community.
The way they get involved, like Beast is actually a great example right now. Beast has been following my work for a while, and Sammy is, you actually did a comic called Ghost Chasers, which because Sammy is a gorilla, I based it on the old Ghostbusters live action Saturday morning show.
Yes.
With Tracy the gorilla and Spencer. So I made Sammy and another character, Devin, these ghost chasers. And of course it was a nerd that was masquerading as a ghost, and scary things ensue, and fetish things happen because diapers just fall out of the air.
That was the first like actual like comic like narrative that I worked on with you.
I think so.
As I've always told you, like I admire what you do with it, in that you don't seem to, as much as you play to the fetishism, you don't seem to play to the tropes that you see. You've given me a lot of creative freedom, even especially with like the prints, which are always sort of one-off things, but I never feel as though I have to play to a certain art style. I never feel as though I have to play to a certain type. You seem to like you always seem to try to take different angles with it. I think whenever you described that one, you were like, think of it like a Scooby-Doo episode, meets the old Ghostbusters live action show meets, the diaper fetishism aspect. So it's one of the reasons that I think that we've continued to have like a successful creative working relationship, is that, I don't feel like you play to, you do. There's times whenever you tell me like, I know what my audience wants, and you know what I mean? Like, but you don't seem to play specifically to type in a way that I have seen, a lot of whether it be furry fandom or a lot of fetishism. You seem to be. It's just the genre you work in. It's not. Your work isn't fully defined by that genre, in that you don't play to these tropes that seem to be inherent in a lot of other people's work. You definitely come at it from a different angle.
Well, this is the thing. Okay, porn. Okay, if you've ever watched a porn movie, and I use the term movie very loosely here, it's like, oh no, my clothes fell off. It's really, it's the movie is about the sex. That's all it's about. I can't write that way. I need for the narrative to be honest and to have integrity, even if its focus is something as niche as diaper fetishism, right? So no, you don't just trip over things and have them happen. There's got to be a setting. There's got to be characterization. There's got to be all that thing. And some people say, like one guy actually said to me, "You are wasting your talent on this stuff." And I disagree, because this is a story as much as anything else I create is a story. It's just that I know my audience and I know what they want to see, but I want to give it to them fresh every time.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to say one thing too.
Oh, feel free to chime in.
The characters that I do, it's nice when you have a feedback on a particular character. And the reason I'm saying this, I remember a story with the Lion King with Scar. Life is not fair when he has the mouse. There was this kid in New York. He stole his money. He was on drugs. He stole his grandmother's car. He was racing down New Jersey highway at $110, $120, in a Lincoln Continental. And then he comes home. He gets arrested, and then they got him for bail. And then he finds his grandfather's gun and a rifle or whatever, and he puts it up to his mouth, and he puts on the videotape of the Lion King, and he sees that scene that Scar says, "Life is not fair," and he puts the gun down. I'm just saying a character can invoke a lot of, things in a person's mind when they're, ready to end it all or whatever. I just wanted to mention that because I saw that in a publishing. It was published on a while back. I think I still have it on my computer somewhere. And he almost committed suicide. But seeing Scar and him saying that, I'm just saying not as a Disney thing, but saying those words, he decided to change his whole life around because of that. And that's what one of my characters, someone will come up to me, "Do you know your character, Berwick, inspired me to go do this?" That's a nice feeling. No amount of money, no amount of money can, talk volumes.
No, I agree.
Rather than an actual person, Mike, and, I just want to say that to clarify it. And that makes me feel, it's like an ice cube melting in me. It feels good.
Yes.
And that makes me want to work more and harder. Because yes, I've had a character today. I can stand up and say, I got up this morning. I had somebody tell me that a character changed their whole life. That's a life changer, game changer in itself. And
I had an experience.
I want to say that because it inspires me to make more. Yeah, go ahead.
I had an experience with a friend and client, Kurt Christensen. We had a bit of a falling out, but it was totally on me. I was being a bit of an asshole, but I was just in a bad place at the time. But I still, much love to him. He's doing the turbo thrust. What is it? Adventures in Time, Space. I would have to look into it. But Kurt, Casey Christensen of Kings County Comics, he had me design some characters for him. And he said, he's like, "Man, this was like inspired by your Thunder Chicken stuff going all the way back to like the Zuda days." I'm like, "That's like a decade ago." I was like, I didn't realize anybody was paying attention for that long. Wow. And then I designed the characters that were inspired by the work that I did. And just the realization that you can fall into the sort of silent apathy of most people don't comment. Most people don't give feedback. Most people just enjoy your work and they'll even share it. But like a lot of times the people who really appreciate your work, they fall silent, and they fall silent for a long time. I had no idea people, unless they were like friends of mine, creative friends of mine. I had no idea. Like I had only, started really talking to him a couple years ago. And I had no idea that anybody was actually really paying attention for that long. So yeah, like just realizing that even when you don't think that you're having an effect on people, even if it's not as bold as somebody saying like, oh, this work, completely changed my life. It's just realizing that a lot of times, and then I think about stuff that I liked that was very indie, and artists that I liked that I'll think like, who was that artist? I remember I used to love them. I used to like follow their work all the time, and then they kind of just fall off your radar for a while. Is it just a realization that even when people are silent, like your work is having an effect in that people are enjoying it even whenever you're not hearing it all the time. The majority of people are silent. It's only the really hardcore fans and the really hardcore haters who are the ones making all the noise.
Mm-hmm. Give us feedback. That's what we want to say. If you take one thing away from this today, give us feedback.
Lavish us in praise.
Let us know what character affected you.
If you're gonna hate on anybody, hate on me, because
I get my Purple Heart. There we go. I saved somebody's life by a pencil, a pen, a mechanical pencil.
Yeah,
it's 25-cent plastic pen. Yeah. It happens, and that's a real money can't buy that.
No,
you can't buy that feedback. No way, no how, and it stays with you for a lifetime.
The relationship between an audience and a creator is a sacred thing. Like, as much as we joke around and whatnot, that thing you're describing, that moment that where one person says that one thing to you, and you realize that this whole time you've been creating something that touches someone. Yeah, I have goosebumps even just talking about it. It blows my mind. It's
fantastic. I agree. Yeah, I love it, and it's the best. It gives you drive. It gives you positive energy.
Absolutely.
I believe it. I wholeheartedly believe it.
So. 1 second, but yeah. And again, we may, I intended to go pretty long tonight, but I think we've got a good test. So I don't know how long we're going to go. We're going to go at least an hour altogether and see where it gets us. But like I also, again, expected to have more voices in terms of giving feedback. But like, worst case scenario, I might see what you guys are doing tomorrow night and see if I can line things up with Mike and Steve. I'm going to have to abuse Steve verbally. For,
yeah.
But I dropped it on him at the last minute, but I just like abusing him. He deserves it completely. He doesn't. He's just the thing I abuse him about the most. And he is I believe it's Artistic Discipline on Twitter. Let me go double check because I have that. Let me check my profile. What his name is? It's either. Let's see. Give me just one moment. Yeah, art discipline, all one word. The thing that I abuse him the most about is the fact that he has a brittle spirit when it comes to creative, and he is one of my favorite artists. I have learned so much about shape, so much about cartooning, so much about design. I've learned so much from Steve Musgrave from Art Discipline on Twitter. And he's moving into, and another reason I wanted to have him on is because he's moving into sort of spank fetishist type of stuff. So like it loosely connects, it's a wide range of voices that I want to have kind of involved, and even beyond just the 5 people that I had planned for the night. He's into that, and he's talked to who's the guy that did Catwoman back in the day, but starts with a B. Jim Balent. He's talked to Balent a lot, and gotten friendly with him just because he's gotten really supportive. But then just recently, like I was messaging him and he was like, "I'm so done with the art crowd. I'm so done with all this stuff." Like he just he can be so. He can be so hard to please in terms of his own creativity, in terms of where he's at with things, and I just try to tell him like you just got to keep doing it, man, because he's so good. We have Turkey in the Hay just said, do you find a fetish audience is easier for a writer since Karis said the community enjoys a variety of stories as long as the fetish is present? Are mainstream fans more critical of writing? Karis?
Yes, it is easier to write for a fetish audience because going into it, you have a built-in success module, so long as it's in there, right? And yeah, you'll get some critiques, but not like not a lot, they're very minor critiques. But in my mainstream things, at least when they get noticed, and they're not noticed as much as my fetish stuff, the mainstream things do tend to have people asking more questions, seeking more clarification, not out and out criticizing or critiquing, but the buy-in is not as strong, is not as solid. And I think that's because the crowd for mainstream is much more diverse.
Yeah, and I think that it's also that the fetish aspect is unifying and be in the crowd, in that, it's especially whenever it's a niche, it's unifying in that, like, just like anything, but even like with comics back in the day, like you feel like, oh, I must be weird, and then you realize, oh no, there's a bunch of people who are weird like me. Let's all be weird together. Right. that it provides a unity, whereas it seems like the unity that's being provided in other aspects of narrative nowadays is a unity that's derived from a villain or a enemy, or and that's also one thing that I appreciate about the fetish community. As well, is the fact that they do derive their unity from a love and not a hate or a necessary unifying villain character, unifying enemy type, which but you find that in everything. You find that whenever it comes to like geopolitics, that nothing unifies nationalism like jingoism. You know what I mean? Like nothing unifies a country like a common enemy. Mm-hmm. And when that goes into narrative, I think it doesn't become creative storytelling as much as it becomes propaganda.
Yeah.
And two, it just that type of personality will never be happy because they'll always be seeking the enemy that is among their flock.
Yeah. Haters gonna hate.
Yeah. As my friend back at the warehouse and greenhouse job used to tell me, haters never win. And that was because I was being a total hater to him at the time. And he was right. And, I've done my best. I can still be a rascal. You can ask Casey back there. She'll tell you how rascally I can get. I've definitely, I've tried to focus more on the stuff that I love, especially whenever it comes to creative aspects, and really look around and have that realization of the things that I need to be grateful for. Now let's talk a little bit about monetizing your creativity beyond just the crowdfunding. Now you said earlier, Karis, to reach out, outside of the social media. And social media, back whenever I started out, it was the boards. We all were unified by the boards. We all were brought together by the message boards. And it was comic book message boards, art message boards, character design message boards, cartooning message boards. So you had a little bit more diversity in the places, but now everything is unified on social media. I found, I've picked up one-off commissions from Reddit a lot recently. I've picked up one-off commissions. I'm trying to think of some other places, but I've found, and I don't live some big lavish lifestyle, but I've been able to support myself, going back to freelancing full time. I've been able to support myself with it, wholly with it, with nothing but art for the last 6 months. And I did not think I was going to get this far.
Wow.
I thought I was going to fail miserably. I thought I was going to end up homeless. I thought it was all going to end up falling apart, 4 months at best. Here I am, 6 months in, about to change into the new year, new decade. So, give me some, tell everybody a little bit about any tips or any ideas you would have in terms of monetizing and maybe to broaden the scope of what people think of whenever it comes to actually attempting to monetize your creativity.
Well, this is hard for some people, but I definitely noticed a spike in monetization when I started doing conventions. A friend of mine pointed out to me, and I'm not an artist, I'm a writer, so I can't produce what the end product like at the drop of a hat. I can't go to a convention and go, yes, I'll draw whatever you want, here you go. I can't do that. So my sales, and this is what my friend called it, he said, your sales are relationship sales. People get to know you, they become interested in your product. And that's what I did in the furry community for years and years and years. I became this character, this Karis, and people loved to come to the table and we'd talk and whatnot. I created relationship bonds with them. And in turn, they would go home, get on the internet, and talk up my stuff because they had met me. So that's a dimension, that is offline. That, and you know, I know it's difficult. It's quite difficult to be, you know, to be presenting yourself to people. But there's no question in my mind that it absolutely helps to see and to be seen in public representing your work.
That's what I did with the Comic-Cons going. I really felt, but this is even better because now I've got the backing of an artist and a writer. I guess I was trying to look at that time back in 2015 and stuff. And after sending my story to Wild Sound and for editing and stuff, they actually made a movie. I sent you the link to the movie, a mini movie, which with IMDb, certification licensing. On one of the chapters of my book, so it was
wow,
and they had it read. And I was very happy, very proud. I thought it's like, gee, I must be a writer, and you know it. So
and I remember back in the day, I did cons for a while, and back in about 20. God, what would have been somewhere around like 2011? I said I'm not going to do another convention until I have a body of work. That I can promote, and the end result of that was Double Jumpers, which I did with Dave DeWanch Action Lab. I love Dave, but I've been a bit of a shit to Dave at times, and that's just my own bullshit. But I love the work that we did on that. I loved the experience of it, of being able to go out and go to conventions after the fact, with the book and have, get to the point where like on the second or third day of the convention, you have the pitch down, this is a book about 4 programmers who, and it just, and having that experience firsthand, for me, like as an artist, because, and it is much easier as an artist to promote yourself than it is as a writer. That is one thing that I do not envy writers, is that the image sells itself in a split second. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been trying to get into more, get into out of my comfort zone and get into places of interest where I wanted to work in for a while, but just never really reached out into. Not all of them came through completely. I started doing I reached out to some people in the hip hop community, underground hip hop, and found some people that I really liked what they were doing, with syllables. And I wanted to start doing some art that was helping them to promote their work, was helping them to represent their music with visuals. My favorite of which, and then really the only one that has gone all the way to fruition. There's a couple other people that I just unfortunately haven't been able to sort things out with as well. But there's a rapper named Luciv, Luciv.
Yes, I saw you work with him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did a couple of covers for singles for him that I was really happy with. Gave me a lot of creative freedom. I've branched out into just by happenstance into like the car mod community, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to do more of that this year. In terms of commissions, I have a great consistent client who commissions me and pays really well, and I do very almost like Mad Magazine-esque cartoons of his friends and his friends who are getting married, or his friends who have been in a relationship, or friends that are like, one was like his godson, or one guy's godson, so it was one of his friends and their godson, and all the elements that are in those commissions are stuff that he pointed out and stuff that he specifically said he wanted in there. And so I've done tried to reach out more and get out of my comfort zone, and not I think this year is probably the year that I've spent working mostly not in comics. out of, but that's also given me experience. I've gotten some more design experience, logo design. I've done work for Chris Raygun, designed a couple logos for him, and done a few different merch things.
Yeah.
And he is, I love his content. I know a lot of people take it the hard way, but it usually seems to be people who are kind of like have a political ideology that they're coming from before they even view it, because people have described him as a alt-right, and I'm like, Chris is pretty liberally minded. He's just maybe not liberal in the definition that it is nowadays. But I've loved working with him. I've tried to reach out to more YouTubers, and I'm going to continue to try to do that. But it's definitely getting out of your comfort zone and definitely trying new things. I spent around this time last year, I spent a couple of months working up about, I think like 8 to 10 designs for a t-shirt shop. And it was literally just an experiment in design. It didn't really go anywhere. Those designs are still up on Redbubble, I believe. But it really didn't do much, but it was just for my own. It was so that, now I have a part of my portfolio that is completely more minimalist design oriented. I've recently started working with a game that's sort of in the vein of Neopets called Never Guardians, and done quite a few character designs for them. And done some alterations on other people's designs in terms of like different skins, different patterns, spots, and stuff that you can pick. Never Guardians has a Tumblr. I know you can see a lot of the work on there, and you can see a lot of it on my site, which I need to update. I need to either revamp my site or update the blog more often, because I keep the portfolio updated every couple of months, but I have a hard time, just juggling all the things. Speaking of which, let's talk about juggling life and work, and especially the creative work, because that is really a struggle that every day, it's never
Someone
enough.
should write a book called My Struggle, and it will all be about this.
Woo! Oh goodness. So tell me about like your struggles with balancing, and especially because you have 2 different brands. That's like having 2 different women.
Well, I have 2 different brands. I'm a father of 2 boys, 2 teenage boys. I work at a job that requires that I travel like quite a bit. The saving grace is that I only work about half the month. So I do have some downtime, but every day I'm not at the bread and butter job. I'm hustling, or feeling bad that I'm not hustling, because some days you just don't have the mojo, right? Like you just have to admit that to yourself. And this is what frustrates me, both about myself and about other people I have worked with. If it matters to you, you will make the time.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know anybody in this industry, except, you, Bill, right now are totally supporting yourself with art, which, thank God, what a great thing. That's awesome. Yeah. But
you're here.
So many of us have to have that, that bread and butter job, which psychologically, you should think of that job as your side gig. You are an artist or a writer or a creator first. That is your side gig. It just happens to pay the bills.
Yeah, I
but
agree with
mentally, you should, in my opinion, be in that space where you're like, no, this is what I want to do. This is my passion. And I know that I'm exhausted, but even 1 hour, just 1 hour doing something, anything, update your blog. I don't care what it is, so that you have done something for your project that day.
And you'll find that even if you say, I'm going to block off a half hour of time, you'll find that you'll end up spending an hour and a half doing it, because once you get going with it,
right,
the momentum increases.
Exactly.
Jeff, give me some of your experience in terms of balancing the creative aspects and life and work and just juggling all the things and still keeping at it. Because you've been, like you said, you've been working on this for 20 years. And I'm sure, like it's at points you said you thought about tossing it. I mean, I think we've all had where we're like, should I just quit now before it gets worse? But let me hear what you have to say in terms of that topic.
Well, in terms of quitting, you don't win. It's a lose-lose situation. you somehow you got to get the mojo going again, and work, because people, like I was saying earlier, when people like your character or something, they like what you're drawing. It's like, boy, that inspires me. Just they walk by and they just seeing you drawing something, and they say, wow, and they're coming around looking at all cockeyed angles and everything, and if that right there is a positive drive for me. Saying, people, and they want to shake your hand, or they want, can I give you something? Can I give you a business card? And all that. And they want this and they want that, and it's all that in combination that, for me, it's a drive. It's a drive factor. Over the past year, I lost my mom and everything, to old age, dementia and stuff. But both my parents are gone now, and I got the house, and my siblings want part of the house anyway. They're entitled to it, and I don't want to go through a probate or whatever, and I just sell the place. I'll be out of here by spring, I think, and I'll be going through that in the next coming year too, and I'll have to juggle that along with my job and doing this as well when I'm trying to find a place too to live.
Yeah, heavy
I'm
stuff.
looking right now, but this will never go. This will never go away. I'll tell you right now, because I've already started it, and before my mom passed away, I showed her the cardinal rigor mortis drawing, which you've seen many times, slicing the candle. And that's what the reason like I said, the book is not a book, it's a statement. And with him slicing the candle, a lit candle off some kind of stand or whatever, it's like the candle was still lit in the drawing. You can cut it in half, but you can't get rid of it completely with the sword. Right. You whether you use a double-edged sword or whatever, it's a defining. I try to do unique pieces for the characters, for what they're doing, and I think that's kind of a drive for me. I want to put them in, still in the book, in the scene, but I want to put them doing something out of the ordinary, maybe, or that's not part of the scene. So, each piece. That's why I say each piece is unique, because I don't think I could copy it again, no matter how hard I try. But I can try at least copy the character in itself as best I can. But juggling, yeah, it's difficult.
Now it's interesting because you say that you lost your mom. I lost my dad. I know that Karis, you lost your mother in this past year, correct?
I sure did.
Yeah, and is it right around the same time? Really, whenever I was dying, I remember you messaging me, being like, and that's just an odd little synchronicity that I see. Like, we've all had to deal with. And that I think that you can't help but have that be both a drive, and it affects the work. I mean, because it makes you think about your mortality, and it makes you think about like why you're doing what you're doing. If you want to, do you want to say anything on that, Karis? Like
for myself, it was never a thought in my head that I would ever stop doing what I'm doing. But I remember kind of messaging people going, I'm not sure how I'm going to be for the next month, because I don't know how this will affect me. But I knew I would keep doing what I wanted to do. I just might take a few days to not do anything and just process. But there was never a thought in my mind about quitting or going in a new direction. It was more passive for me. It was more, let's see what this does. Let's see what happens emotionally.
Oh yeah. And I think I remember you saying something like very much like that to me around that time. And we were both kind of dealing with it both around the same time, very, very close period of time because it was, right around the time that I was dealing with the aftermath of it. I messaged you about stuff, and you were like, "Oh, this just happened," and I remember you saying like, I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know how this is going to affect me, and I remember you being very, very, very quiet about it. It was but you could tell like there was something going on with you. I apologize if you can hear my cat in the background.
Yes,
causing a fuss.
Racket.
He's spoiled, and Casey decided to eat some tuna, which is probably the worst. But I think we could maybe consider that the alarm bell I'm going to reach out to Mike. I'm going to reach out to Steve. I'm going to see if maybe we can schedule something for tomorrow night. If possible, I mean, would you be available, Karis? Jeff, you seem like you're available.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Tomorrow night.
Okay. We could consider this kind of a test run, and see, where it goes from there. I didn't want to be on too long tonight, but tomorrow night, well, let me see. Tomorrow I'm going to be, I got something to do in the early evening, but maybe we could see if we can sort things out somewhere around like 9-ish. But I'll reach out to everybody and get the time zones right this time, obviously, and kick Steve in the ass a little bit and make sure that Mike knows that 8 Eastern. But you guys, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate having some different voices and just kind of covering some topics, talking about some things. And I hope that we can get some, get those guys on and see where we can go from there with it. But yeah, for now, to everybody that tuned in, thank you very much for tuning in. The people that were in the chat talking to us, we really appreciate that. We really love getting the feedback. And, I think this is, I'm trying to get a head start on the whole New Year's resolution things in terms of starting to get rolling on this so that by the time the new year comes, I'm already doing it instead of, considering it the last minute. To try to do the YouTube thing a little bit more consistently. And see what, if it can help not only kind of build the audience for everybody that gets involved with it, but also to get some different voices together and commenting on stuff. Jeffrey Anthony Campos, where are you at on social media?
I got twitter.com psychic pencil, or you can go to the site I've had since 2003, candlejack.com.
Okay, Karis, where are you at on social media?
Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Karis Playground, all one word. I'm on Facebook, Karis Playground, and I have my own website, karisplayground.com.
All right, guys, and I am, of course, Bad Ankle Bill. On Twitter, Bad Ankle Bill. On Instagram, Bad Ankle Bill. On Facebook, Bad Ankle Bill. I've unified that branding, and the website is badanklebill.com or badankle.com. And yeah, to everybody checked in, everybody that tuned in, everybody in the chat, everybody that whether you can hear this or not, much love and infinite mojo to you, and super profundo on the early eve of your day, and I mean that. You guys all have a great night, and thank you folks again. I'm going to end the broadcast. We'll talk a little bit backstage.
Good night.